Welcome back to Still Here, Still Trying. I'm Nira, and this is the part where I introduce Mike Baker. You know, the guy who's calm enough to talk about stability without panicking, and honest enough to admit that calm can be deeply unsettling. Today, Mike's digging into something nobody really warns you about. What happens when life finally steadies? When the chaos backs off, and your nervous system doesn't know what to do with the silence. We're talking about why calm can feel uncomfortable, why some people start stirring things up when everything's actually fine, and how learning to trust good things takes more courage than surviving hard ones. Mike's not here to hype you up. He's here to help you slow down, breathe, and maybe stop sabotaging the peace you work so hard to build. If you've ever caught yourself thinking, why does this feel weird when it's finally okay? Congratulations. You're gonna like this episode. Here's Mike.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Still Here, Still Trying. I'm Mike Baker, your host. Like every week, thank you for being here. Quick note up front, if this show has ever helped you slow down, think a little clearer, or feel less alone in the world, make sure you're following or you're subscribing wherever you listen. Be sure to share it with someone who might need it, because that is how this keeps reaching all of the right people. All right, well, listen, let's get into it. Today's episode is about something that we don't talk about enough. We spend a lot of time preparing people for chaos, for stress, for grind, for holding it together when things are hard. But we don't spend much time talking about what happens when life finally steadies. When the noise drops, when the urgency fades, when things are fine. For a lot of people, that calm actually feels stranger than the chaos ever did. So today, I want to talk about stability. I want to talk about why it can feel uncomfortable and why people sometimes sabotage it without realizing that they're doing it, and how to learn to live well inside calm without blowing things up just to feel something again. If you're in a steady place right now or working your way toward one, well, this episode is for you. Well, look, nobody really prepares you for what stability feels like. We talk a lot about surviving hard chapters, about pushing through, about holding things together when everything feels uncertain. But we don't talk much about what happens when the noise finally quiets down. When the crisis passes, when the fires go out, when life stops demanding emergency decisions every day. Stability actually shows up quietly. And for a lot of people, that quiet feels strange. Sometimes it even feels wrong. I've seen people reach a place that they worked hard to get to, and instead of relief, they feel restless, unsettled, almost disappointed. That person's been me several times in my life. They start asking questions that they don't expect. Why does this feel flat? Why don't I feel happier than this? Why do I miss the intensity? And that can be confusing. And if you don't understand what's happening, it's easy to assume that something is off. Because what's really happening is recalibration. When you've lived in constant problem-solving mode, your nervous system, it gets used to motion. Urgency becomes familiar. Adrenaline becomes normal. So when life steadies, your system doesn't immediately register peace. It registers the absence of stimulation. That absence can feel like loss before it feels like safety. I have watched people mistake that feeling for boredom or lack of ambition or even failure. But guess what? It's none of those things. It's your system learning a brand new rhythm. Chaos gives you instant feedback, and stability, it asks for patience. In unstable chapters, you always know what to do next. There's a problem in front of you, a decision to make, a fire to put out. Stability removes that script, and suddenly there's space. And space can be uncomfortable if you're not used to it. There's less noise to react to, which means more room to notice how you actually feel. More room to hear your own thoughts, and more room to confront questions you didn't have time to before. And that can feel heavy at first. So here's something really important to understand. If things feel oddly quiet after a hard stretch, that doesn't mean that you've lost your edge. It means your body and mind are adjusting to a safer environment. And that adjustment takes time. You don't need to rush to fill the silence. You don't need to manufacture excitement. And you don't need to assume that there's something missing. Sometimes the quiet is actually the work. One practical thing you can do is resist the urge to immediately replace the noise. Don't stack your schedule, don't invent new pressure, and don't turn calm into a problem to solve. Let the quiet teach you what it feels like. Pay attention to what shows up when there's no emergency pulling your focus, because that information matters. Stability doesn't arrive with fireworks, it arrives with breathing room. And learning to live inside that breathing room is a skill most of us were never taught. There's a pattern that I've seen over and over again. Things settle down, life gets steadier, the big issues calm down, and instead of enjoying that, people start stirring things up. They pick a fight that didn't need to happen. They reopen a conversation that was already closed. They take on work that they don't actually need. They convince themselves that something is wrong because nothing is loud. And this isn't about drama, it's about familiarity. For a lot of people, friction becomes identity. When you've spent years responding to pressure, being needed, solving problems, or holding things together, that state starts to feel like who you are. Movement equals worth, urgency equals value. So when stability shows up, there's a gap. And if you don't understand that gap, your instinct is to fill it. Not because life is bad, because stillness feels unfamiliar. Some people mistake calm for complacency. Others confuse peace with losing momentum. Some assume that if nothing is wrong, something must be about to go wrong. So they stay busy, they stay reactive, they stay just uncomfortable enough to feel useful. I have watched so many people sabotage good situations without realizing it. They get sucked into the drama. They overwork themselves when there's no real need. They start fixing things that weren't broken. They go looking for threats instead of letting things be okay. That behavior doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from conditioning. And when your nervous system is trained in vigilance, calm can feel unsafe. Your mind starts scanning for problems because that's what it knows how to do. So here's the part that matters. Creating problems gives you a sense of control. Solving them gives you a hit of relief. That loop can feel productive even when it's unnecessary. But over time, it costs you. It drains energy. It strains relationships. It keeps you from noticing what's actually good. So here's a question worth asking when you feel the urge to stir things up. Is there a real issue here, or am I uncomfortable with the quiet? Because that question alone can stop a lot of the self-inflicted stillness. Another useful pause is this. If I do nothing right now, what actually happens? Most of the time, the answer is nothing bad. And sometimes the answer is things stay fine. Imagine that. And that can be hard to accept if you're used to earning safety through effort. Learning to sit in stability takes practice. It means letting days be uneventful without judging them. It means allowing relationships to feel steady without testing them. It means trusting that calm doesn't need constant supervision. This doesn't mean that you stop caring. It means you stop confusing tension without meaning. One practical thing you can try this week is to notice when you're about to create urgency. Before sending that message, before taking on that extra thing, before revisiting an old issue, just pause and ask yourself whether you're responding to a real need or a familiar pattern. You just might be surprised how often it's just the pattern. Stability doesn't need to be proven, it needs to be experienced. And learning to let things be fine without interference is one of the most underrated skills there is. All right, well, when people start to feel steady, there's often a fear that sneaks in. If things are calm, am I still growing? If there's no urgency, am I falling behind? If life feels predictable, have I settled? Those questions make sense in a culture that equates progress with movement and noise. We're taught that growth should feel intense, that improvement should be visible, that if you're not chasing something, you're drifting. Stability challenges that idea. Growth doesn't disappear when things calm down, it just changes pace and shape. In unstable chapters, growth is reactive. You adapt because you have to. You learn fast because the stakes are high. Everything feels sharp and immediate. Stability creates a different kind of opportunity. You get to choose what to improve instead of responding to what's breaking. You get to work on things that compound quietly instead of scrambling for quick wins. And that kind of growth doesn't announce itself. It happens in habits, in small adjustments, in decisions that don't look impressive from the outside. It's easy to overlook because it doesn't come with adrenaline, but it lasts. One mistake people make is assuming that if they're not expanding, launching, or pushing, they're standing still. But that's not how progress actually works. Some of the most meaningful improvements happen when you're no longer in survival mode, when you have enough stability to think clearly, to reflect, and to refine. This is where you build systems, where you strengthen relationships, where you invest in health, craft, and consistency. These things don't trend well on social media and they don't create instant feedback, but they change your life. A helpful question in stable seasons is this: what's one small thing I could improve that would make everything else just a little bit easier? Not bigger, not faster, just better. Maybe it's tightening a routine. Maybe it's cleaning up communication. Maybe it's getting more honest about where your energy goes. Choose something that supports the life you're already living instead of chasing a new one. Stability gives you the chance to build with intention, to align your effort with your values instead of urgency. And that's not settling, that is maturing. If you're in a steady place right now, you don't need to blow it up to prove that you're still ambitious. You get to decide what growth looks like now. And often, the quiet improvements are the ones that carry you the furthest. There's another layer to stability that doesn't get talked about enough. Sometimes when things finally get good, we just don't trust it. We tell ourselves we're just being realistic. We say that we're staying prepared. We keep one foot braced just in case. Brene Brown calls it foreboding joy. But underneath it, there's just something quieter. After long stretches of instability, good things can feel temporary. Like they're on loan. Like if you relax too much, you'll jinx it. So instead of settling in, people stay half alert. They wait for the other shoe to drop. They scan for signs of trouble. They enjoy things cautiously with an exit plan already in mind. And that posture is 100% understandable, but it's also exhausting. Living on edge doesn't protect you from loss. It just keeps you from fully experiencing what's already here. And I've seen people struggle to accept calm relationships because drama once felt normal. I've seen people undercut their own success because ease felt suspicious. I've seen people rush past good moments instead of letting them land. Not because they're ungrateful, because they're guarded. Stability asks for a different skill. It asks for trust. And trust doesn't mean pretending that things won't change. It means allowing yourself to be present without rehearsing the ending. And that can feel vulnerable, especially if you've been through enough to know that nothing is guaranteed. But here's the thing. You don't need to earn the right to enjoy what's good. You don't need to stay tense to stay safe. You don't need to keep proving you're ready for disaster. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let something be good while it's good. If you want something practical to try, well, here it is. When something feels steady or positive, just resist the urge to narrate its fragility. Don't immediately follow joy with a warning. Don't hedge every good moment with a reminder that it might not last. Just notice it. Let yourself say, even quietly, this is okay right now. That simple allowance can change how your body responds to stability. It teaches your nervous system that calm doesn't equal danger. Trust builds through repetition, and so does peace. Learning to trust good things doesn't mean that you've forgotten the hard ones. It means you're choosing to live where you are instead of where you've been. And that choice takes courage. When you step back and look at all of this together, a pattern shows up. Stability doesn't arrive with noise or momentum. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't try to convince you that it belongs. It just shows up quietly. And if you've spent a long time living in urgency, that quiet can feel unsettling at first, and you might wonder why it doesn't feel better right away, or why part of you wants to stir things up again. That doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It means you're learning a new way to live. We talked about how stability can feel like loss before it feels like relief. How people create problems when they are fine because friction once felt familiar. How growth continues even when it's no longer loud or visible. How trusting good things can take more courage than surviving hard ones. None of that requires fixing. It just requires patience. If life feels steady right now, you don't need to rush to fill the space. You don't need to manufacture momentum or prove that you're still moving. Sometimes the work is just learning how to stay present without bracing for impact. Let consistency rebuild trust. Let good things be good without narrating their ending. And if you're not in a stable place yet, this isn't pressure or comparison. It's just a reminder that quiet strength exists, and it's something that you can grow into at your own pace. So wherever you're at, thank you for being here. Thanks for listening. I'm so glad that you're still here. I'm so glad that you're still trying, because that helps me stay here and stay trying. So if you're listening, thank you for being here. I hope you have a beautiful week. All right. Well, like we do every week, before we close, I want to leave you with a song. I've been stepping back into the archives a little bit. This song is called Even the Strong Break. This episode was about stability, calm, and learning to trust good things again. And this song is the other side of that truth. Strength doesn't mean that you never crack. It doesn't mean that you carry everything without cost. It means you give yourself permission to pause when the weight finally shows up. Breaking isn't failure. Sometimes it's honesty. Sometimes it's the moment that you stop pretending that you're fine and start taking care of yourself. If you've been the steady one for a long time, this one's for you. Let it remind you that you don't have to be unbreakable to be strong. Thanks for being here. Enjoy the song.
You've carried the world on your back too long. Always steady, always strong. But no one's unbreakable, no one's immune. Even the strongest can shatter too soon. You've worn that smile like a shield of steel, hiding the weight of the hurt you feel. But it's okay to fall, it's okay to bend. Sometimes breaking is where we begin. Even the strong break, even the brave fall. Sometimes the hardest thing is to risk it all. But through the cracks the light finds its way. Even the strong break, but they rise someday. You think the world won't understand, but everyone's been there with trembling hands. It's not the fall that defines your fight, it's how you rebuild when in the morning's light. Even the strong break, even the brave fall. Sometimes the hardest thing is to risk it all. But through the cracks the light finds its way. Even the strong break, but they rise someday. Let yourself feel, let yourself cry. You don't have to carry it all inside. Breaking's not the end, it's just a pause, a moment to breathe, to rest your soul. Even the strong break, even the brave fall. Sometimes the hardest thing is to risk it all. But through the cracks the light finds its way. Even the strong break, but they rise someday. So take the time, give yourself grace. It's in the breaking you find your place. Even the strong break, but they never stay. They rise again, stronger each day.